It was February 1513. A man was dragged from his home in the middle of the night. No warning, no trial, no mercy. Soldiers threw him into a stone cell beneath the city of Florence. His hands were tied behind his back. Then they hung him from his wrists until his shoulders tore. They did it 6 times. 6 times they pulled him up. 6 times they dropped him. And 6 times he refused to confess to a crime he did not commit. His name was Niccolò Machiavelli. He had spent 15 years serving Florence. He had been a diplomat, a statesman, a man who shaped governments. And in one single night, they took everything. His job, his money, his freedom, his name. They wanted to break him. They failed. What happened next is the part nobody talks about. After they released him, bruised, broke, and exiled to a farm outside the city, Machiavelli did not sit down and cry. He did not beg to be let back in. He did not spend his days writing letters to the people who destroyed him. He sat down at a small wooden desk, and he wrote the most dangerous book in human history. Not dangerous because it taught violence, dangerous because it taught truth. A truth so raw, so uncomfortable, that kings tried to ban it, churches condemned it, powerful men burned it. And yet somehow, 500 years later, you are here, listening to ideas they could not kill, because the truth does not die just because someone is afraid of it. That book was The Prince, and buried inside it is a code. Not a code for rulers, a code for survival. A code for anyone who has ever been knocked down, counted out, stripped of everything, and left to figure out what they are made of. Tonight, we are going to decode it. But before we go any further, I need to say something to you directly. Something the world has probably not said to you in a long time. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are not too late. I know that is not what it feels like. I know there are people in your life right now who act like your ceiling is low. People who smile at you and quietly hope you stay exactly where you are. People who give you advice that is really just their own fear wearing a friendly mask. People who pulled you down so many times that you started to wonder if maybe they were right. Maybe this is as far as you go. Maybe this is as good as it gets. Machiavelli would look at that thought and call it what it is. A lie that was handed to you, and a lie you chose to keep. Here is the part that is going to sting a little, and I am not going to apologize for it. Because this is Iron Mind Forge. We do not come here for comfort. We come here for clarity. The people who hurt you are not your real problem. You are, not because you are weak, not because you are wrong, but because somewhere along the way, you gave people a power over your life that they were never supposed to have. You let their words write your story. You let their doubts set your limits. You built a ceiling inside your own mind, and then you stood under it, looking up, wondering why you could not get any higher. Machiavelli wrote this. He said that men are so simple and so obedient to present needs that he who deceives will always find those who allow themselves to be deceived. Read that again slowly. He who deceives will always find those who allow themselves to be deceived. The people who held you back did not hold you back because they were strong. They held you back because you allowed it, because you were waiting for them to change, waiting for them to see your value, waiting for permission from people who were never going to give it to you. Tonight, that waiting ends. Over the next 20 minutes, we are going to walk through 5 principles pulled directly from the dark psychology of Machiavelli. Not theories, not abstract ideas. Principles you can feel in your body by the time this is over. Principles that will change how you see yourself, how you move through the world, and how you respond to every single person who ever bet against you. This is not motivation. This is architecture. The architecture of a mind that cannot be held back, cannot be broken, and cannot be stopped. Let us begin. Ever wonder why some people seem to get exactly what they want, no matter who gets in their way? It might have something to do with a concept that has been talked about for over 500 years, the dark psychology of Machiavelli. Niccolò Machiavelli was a diplomat in Renaissance Florence. He wasn't a psychologist, but his book, The Prince, became a timeless and controversial guide to power. It's basically a rule book for rulers on how to get and keep control. And let's just say, it's not always about playing nice. So, what is Machiavellianism? In modern psychology, it's one of the dark triad personality traits, along with narcissism and psychopathy. People high in Machiavellianism tend to be cynical about human nature, believing that everyone is out for themselves. They're master manipulators, skilled at using flattery, deception, and strategic information to get what they want. They prioritize their own goals above everything, including morality and the feelings of others. For them, the ends always justify the means. Let's break down some of his most famous and most chilling pieces of advice. First, Machiavelli argued it's better to be feared than loved. Why? Because love is fickle. People who love you can turn on you, but fear is a much more reliable motivator. A leader who is feared can maintain order and control because people are afraid of the consequences of disobedience. It's a bleak outlook, but he saw it as a practical reality of leadership. Next, he famously said a leader should be as cunning as a fox and as strong as a lion. The lion represents brute force, the ability to intimidate and overpower enemies. But strength alone isn't enough. You also need to be a fox-like, clever, and able to spot traps. This means you have to be good at deception, at seeing through the plots of others, and at setting your own. It's about a blend of power and intellect, of knowing when to strike and when to be subtle. Another key tactic is what we might call strategic cruelty. Machiavelli wasn't a monster who enjoyed hurting people. Instead, he argued that if you have to be cruel, do it all at once. A swift, decisive act of cruelty will shock people, but it will be over quickly. They'll resent it, but then they'll move on. But if you're constantly being a little bit cruel, doling out small punishments here and there, you create constant resentment and fear. People will never forget, and they'll always be looking for a chance to get back at you. And what about keeping promises? For a Machiavellian, promises are just another tool. A wise ruler, he wrote, should not keep his word when it goes against his interests. Since most people are untrustworthy anyway, you'd be a fool to be the only one playing by the rules. It's a cynical view, for sure, but it's rooted in the idea that in the game of power, you do whatever it takes to win. Now, before you start thinking this is a how-to guide, it's important to remember the context. Machiavelli wrote The Prince for a ruler in a very turbulent and violent time. His advice was about survival in a world where a wrong move could mean losing your power, or even your life. Today, we see these traits in less dramatic, but still impactful ways. The co-worker who takes credit for your work to get a promotion. The politician who makes promises they have no intention of keeping. The friend who uses your secrets against you. These are all examples of Machiavellian tactics in everyday life. Recognizing these behaviors is the first step to protecting yourself from them. People who use dark psychology often rely on their targets being naive or unwilling to see the manipulation. They thrive on exploiting goodwill. So, when you encounter someone who seems overly charming but whose actions don't match their words, be cautious. When someone always seems to benefit from situations while others lose out, pay attention and trust your intuition. If a situation feels off, it probably is. Machiavelli's work is a powerful reminder that the desire for power can bring out the darkest sides of human nature. By understanding these dark psychological tactics, we're not learning to use them, but to recognize and defend against them. It's about being a fox, not to deceive, but to avoid being trapped. What do you think? Is Machiavelli's advice still relevant today? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found this interesting, don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into the complexities of human psychology. Thanks for watching. There is a moment in Machiavelli's Exiled that almost nobody talks about. After the torture, after the prison, after they released him and sent him back to that small farm outside Florence with nothing but the clothes on his back and the thoughts in his head, he went quiet. Not the quiet of a broken man, not the quiet of someone who had given up, a different kind of quiet. A deliberate, architectural quiet, the kind of quiet that is not empty but full of observation, full of calculation, full of a man watching everything while letting the world believe he had become irrelevant. He would wake before dawn. He would work on the farm through the morning, ordinary, invisible, unremarkable, and then in the evening he would sit down alone and write, not to publish, not to perform, not to prove to the people who destroyed him that he was still smart, still capable, still worth something. He wrote for one reason, to build. Nobody knew what he was building. That was the point. While the men who exiled him celebrated their victory over him while they moved on and forgot about the man they had thrown away, Machiavelli was in silence, constructing something that would outlast every single one of them by 500 years. That is the second law of his dark psychology. Silence is not the absence of power. Silence is where power is assembled. Now, let me bring this close to your life. Because this is not ancient history. This is happening to you right now. Think about the last time something good was happening in your life. A plan forming, a goal taking shape, a quiet confidence beginning to grow in you, something real and fragile and new. What did you do? If you are honest, most of you talked about it. You told someone. Maybe someone close to you. Maybe several people. You shared it because sharing it felt like it made it more real. Because saying it out loud felt like claiming it. And then something happened. Maybe they said something small and dismissive. Maybe they gave you that look. The one that says that a nice idea in a tone that means that will never work. Maybe they asked questions that felt like support but were actually doubt dressed in a concerned voice. And that fragile, new, real thing inside you, it got smaller, not because they destroyed it, because you handed it to them before it was strong enough to survive their touch. Machiavelli understood this at a level that most people in his time could not articulate. He wrote in The Prince that men judge by their eyes more than by their hands. Meaning, the world reacts to what it can see, and if you show your moves before you make them, you give everyone watching the chance to position themselves against you. This is not paranoia, this is pattern recognition. The people who are positioned to hold you back are not always your enemies. Sometimes they are your friends. Sometimes they are your family. People who love you, but whose love has a ceiling just slightly above where you are right now. And when you start reaching past that ceiling, they become uncomfortable in ways they themselves don't understand. So they poke holes, gently, kindly, even because they genuinely cannot see what you see. And every hole they poke lets a little air out of something that needed to stay pressurized to survive. Machiavelli's answer to this is the architecture of silence. You do not announce your rebuilding. You do not post your progress for approval. You do not need the validation of people who cannot yet see your destination to confirm that you are moving in the right direction. You move, quietly, consistently, with a discipline that has no audience. And here is what that silence does psychologically, to you first, and then to everyone around you. When you stop broadcasting your moves, your mind stops performing and starts working. There is a difference. A performing mind is always half concerned with how the plan looks to others. A working mind is only concerned with whether the plan is real. The moment you remove the audience from your internal process, your thinking becomes cleaner, sharper, and far more dangerous to every obstacle in front of you. And then something else happens. The people who were waiting for you to stumble, the ones who were quietly satisfied by your struggles, they lose their information. They can no longer track you. They can no longer calibrate their expectations of you. They can no longer prepare for what you are becoming, because they do not know what you are becoming. You become unpredictable. And Machiavelli knew, with absolute certainty, that the unpredictable man is the most difficult man to stop. He wrote that the lion cannot protect himself from traps, and the fox cannot defend himself from wolves. You must be both. You must be strong enough to face what comes at you directly, and clever enough to be invisible to what is hunting you in the dark. Strategic silence is how you become the fox. It is how you move through spaces that would have trapped you if you had announced yourself. It is how you build things that cannot be interfered with because nobody knew they were being built. Now, I am not telling you to become a ghost. I am not telling you to disappear from your life and trust no one and speak to no one and walk through the world like a locked door. Machiavelli himself had people he trusted. He had deep conversations. He had relationships that mattered, but he was selective in a way that most people never learn to be. He understood that depth of trust is earned over time by demonstrated loyalty, not given freely by default to everyone who shows up in your life and seems friendly. Your silence does not mean you are alone. It means you are protected. It means you are the one deciding who gets access to the real version of what you are building, who gets to see the blueprint, who has earned that. And most of the people who are currently holding you back, most of them have never earned that. They got access because you gave it by default, because you were open, because you were trusting, because nobody taught you that openness without discernment is not a virtue. It is a vulnerability. Machiavelli would say this to you plainly. Close the open door, not out of fear, out of understanding. The strongest fortress is not the one with the thickest walls. It is the one the enemy cannot find. Become the fortress they cannot find. Build in silence, move in silence. And when the results finally appear, visible to everyone, undeniable to everyone, let that be the only announcement you ever needed to make. Because segment 4 is going to take everything we have built so far, the freedom from needing to be understood, the architecture of silence, and show you the most dangerous thing Machiavelli ever discovered. What happens to a person who has truly decided they cannot be stopped? There is a specific kind of person that Machiavelli wrote about, with something close to reverence. Not the smartest person, not the most talented, not the one born into the best circumstances, or handed the most opportunities, or surrounded by the most support. The decided man, the person who at some point, in some quiet moment that nobody else witnessed, made a decision so complete, so total, so bone deep, that it changed the entire texture of how they moved through the world. Not a goal, not a wish, not a vision board, a decision. And Machiavelli was very specific about the difference. A goal is something you want. A decision is something you have already accepted the cost of. A goal lives in the future. A decision lives in the present, in the body, in the way you wake up in the morning, and in the way you respond when everything goes wrong. He wrote in The Prince that there is nothing more difficult to carry out, nor more doubtful of success, nor more dangerous to manage, than to initiate a new order of things. Read that slowly. He is not talking about starting a business. He is not talking about moving to a new city, or changing your diet, or waking up an hour earlier. He is talking about the deepest kind of change there is. The change of who you fundamentally are in relation to the world around you. The change that happens when you decide, truly decide, that the old version of your life is finished, and you are not going back to it under any circumstances. That kind of change is difficult. He says so directly. It is full of doubt. It is dangerous. And then he says something that most people miss because they stop reading too soon. He says the reason it is dangerous is not the external world. The reason it is dangerous is that the people who benefited from your old way of being will resist your new one with everything they have. Let that land the moment you truly decide to change. The moment you make that complete internal commitment. The people around you will feel it before you even say a word. And some of them, not all, but some, will push back. Not because they hate you, because your decision is a mirror, and what they see in that mirror is their own undecided life looking back at them. Your growth does not just inspire people, sometimes it disturbs them. Your discipline makes their comfort feel like failure. Your silence makes their noise feel like weakness. Your forward motion makes their stillness feel like a choice they now have to own. And rather than make their own decision, some people will try to pull you back into the version of you that did not make them feel that way. Machiavelli saw this happen to every reformer, every leader, every man of genuine ambition he ever studied. And his conclusion was not to become hard. It was not to become cruel. It was to become decided in a way that external pressure simply could not reach. He called this the internal fortress. Not a wall you build against people, a foundation you build inside yourself. A core so settled, so clear, so anchored in a direction you have fully chosen, that when the pressure comes, and it will come, it finds nothing loose to grab onto. Now here is where this gets personal. I want you to think about a decision you have been circling for a long time. Not thinking about, circling. The way you circle something you already know you need to do, but have not yet fully committed to, because committing fully means you can no longer pretend. The old way is still an option. Maybe it is leaving something behind that has been holding you in place for years. Maybe it is starting something that terrifies you precisely because it matters so much. Maybe it is the decision to stop measuring your worth by a standard someone else invented for you, and start measuring it by something that is actually true. Whatever it is, you know what it is. And here is what Machiavelli's dark psychology tells you about that thing. The cost of deciding is real. He never pretended otherwise. When you make that decision, something ends. A comfort, a familiar identity, a version of the story you have been telling yourself about why the timing is not right yet. Those things will end, and it will feel like loss even when it is actually liberation. But here is the cost of not deciding. Machiavelli was ruthless about this in a way that most people who write about motivation will never be. He said that the man who does not choose his path will have his path chosen for him, and the path chosen by circumstance, by other people's agendas, by the slow drift of days without direction. That path leads to one place, a life that belongs to someone else. Not dramatically, not all at once, slowly, day by day, small surrender by small surrender. Until one morning you wake up and look at the life around you and realize it is entirely made of other people's decisions, and you cannot find yourself anywhere inside it. That is the real danger Machiavelli was warning about, not the enemies outside you. The slow erosion of self that happens when you never fully decide. So what does the decision actually look like? It does not look like a speech. It does not look like a dramatic moment. It does not require an audience or a ceremony or the right circumstances finally arriving. It looks like a single, private, honest moment between you and yourself where you stop negotiating, where you stop saying when the time is right and start saying, The time is now, and I will figure out what I do not yet know as I go. Where you stop asking, what if I fail, and start asking, what is actually lost if I try and fall short, compared to what is certainly lost if I never try at all. Machiavelli made that decision in a prison cell, with broken shoulders, and no certainty that anything he was about to build would ever matter to anyone. He decided anyway, and that decision, made in the dark, in pain, with no guarantee of anything, became the prince, became 500 years of influence, became the foundation of every serious conversation about power, strategy, and the psychology of the human will that has happened since. He did not wait for the right moment. He decided that whatever moment he was in was the one he would work with. That is the third law. The decided man does not wait for permission from the world. He gives himself permission, and then he makes the world adjust. You have been waiting. I understand why. The waiting felt safe. The waiting felt responsible. The waiting felt like the right thing to do until everything lined up. But everything is never going to line up. That is not how this works. That is not how it has ever worked for any person who has ever built something real from nothing. What lines up is you, first, internally, completely, and then you move. Not because the conditions are right, because you have decided that you are. Segment 5 is the last one, and it is the one that ties everything together. The torture cell, the silence, the freedom from needing to be understood, the internal fortress, the decision. It is the part where we talk about what you do tomorrow morning, not in 5 years. Not when you feel ready, tomorrow morning, and it is the part where Machiavelli's dark psychology stops being something you understand and becomes something you live. Tomorrow morning, you are going to wake up, and the world is going to be exactly the same as it was yesterday. The people who underestimated you will still underestimate you. The circumstances that have been weighing on you will still be there. The obstacles will not have moved. The doubts will not have disappeared. The gap between where you are and where you are trying to go will look just as wide in the morning light as it did before you watched this video. And that is the moment, right there. That ordinary, unremarkable, slightly uncomfortable moment when nothing has changed on the outside yet. That is where everything actually begins. Because here is what Machiavelli understood about transformation that nobody who sells you a 30-day program or a weekend seminar will ever tell you. Real change does not announce itself. Real change does not feel like a revolution on the day it starts. Real change feels like an ordinary Tuesday where you made one different choice than you made last Tuesday, and then did it again on Wednesday, and again on Thursday, quietly, without applause, without confirmation that it is working, without any external evidence at all that what you are doing matters. Until one day, and this day always comes, the distance between who you were and who you have become is so large that even the people who were certain you would stay small cannot deny what they are looking at. Machiavelli called this the slow campaign. He wrote that the one who has relied least on fortune has maintained himself best. He was describing military strategy, but what he was really describing is the psychology of the long game. The understanding that the person who builds carefully, consistently, and without dependency on luck or timing or the approval of others, that person builds something that cannot be easily taken away, because they built it themselves, brick by brick, day by day, in the quiet hours when nobody was watching and nothing was guaranteed. So let me give you the actual code, not philosophy now, practice. The first practice is this: every morning before you speak to anyone, before you open your phone, before you let the outside world in, you spend 5 minutes alone with your decision, not reviewing it, not questioning it, sitting with it, feeling the weight of it, reminding your body, not just your mind, what you have decided and why. Machiavelli spent his evenings in what he described as the court of ancient men, in conversation with the great thinkers of the past through their writings. He used that time to recalibrate, to remember who he was when the noise of the world had stripped that away. You need that time too, every single day. 5 minutes, non-negotiable, before the world gets its hands on you. The second practice: you measure yourself by your inputs, not your outcomes. This is the most psychologically liberating thing Machiavelli's dark philosophy points toward, even if he never said it in these exact words. Outcomes depend on fortune, on timing, on factors outside your control. Machiavelli was obsessed with the relationship between human will and fortune. He wrote that fortune controls half of our actions, but leaves the other half to us. That half, your half, is made entirely of inputs: the work you did today, the discipline you maintained today, The choice you made today to move forward instead of sideways. Measure that, track that, build your sense of progress on that, because outcomes will be delayed. They will be uneven. They will sometimes feel completely disconnected from the effort you are putting in, but inputs never lie. Every day you put in the right inputs, you are building whether you can see it yet or not. The third practice, you end every day with one honest question, not a journal prompt, not a reflection exercise. One question: did I move today or did I drift? Moving means you made at least one choice that was directed by your decision. Drifting means you let the day happen to you instead of happening to the day. You do not judge the answer. You do not punish yourself for a drift day. You just answer honestly, because Machiavelli's entire dark psychology rests on one foundation above all others: radical, uncomfortable, unflinching honesty about your own patterns. The man who lies to himself about what he is doing is the easiest man in the world to stop, not by his enemies, by his own blind spots. See yourself clearly, every day, without mercy and without cruelty, just clearly. And the fourth practice, the one that pulls all of this together, you protect your direction more fiercely than you protect your feelings. Your feelings will tell you to stop when stopping is the worst possible thing you could do. Your feelings will tell you it is not working when it is working, but just slowly. Your feelings will tell you that the people who doubt you might be right, that the voice of your old life might be worth listening to, that maybe this time you should explain yourself, justify yourself, prove yourself to the room one more time. Your direction knows better. Machiavelli wrote that the wise man must always follow the paths of great men and imitate those who have excelled, not copy them. Imitate the quality of their commitment, their refusal to be redirected by temporary discomfort, the understanding that the path to anything worth having runs directly through the middle of difficulty, and the only question is whether you are willing to keep walking when the difficulty arrives. You are. I know that because you are still here. Think about what that means for a second. In a world designed to pull your attention in 40 directions simultaneously, you stayed. For 25 minutes you chose to sit with something that challenged you instead of something that simply entertained you. That is not nothing. That is actually the first evidence that the version of you we have been talking about this entire time, the decided one, the silent builder, the person who no longer needs external permission to move, that version is not a future possibility. It is already here. It showed up 25 minutes ago and it stayed. Now it just has to show up tomorrow morning, and the morning after that, and the morning after that. Machiavelli died in 1527, still largely dismissed by the powerful men of his time. Still not fully restored to the position that was taken from him in that midnight arrest 14 years earlier. He never got the full vindication he deserved while he was alive to see it. But he decided anyway. He built anyway. He moved in silence anyway. And 500 years later we are still sitting inside the architecture of his mind, still being shaped by the decision he made in a torture cell with nothing left to lose and everything left to build. That is the legacy of the decided man, not the applause he received. Not the recognition that came in time. The decision itself, the refusal to let what was taken from him define the limit of what he could create. Nobody could hold him back. Nobody could break him. Nobody could stop him. Not because he was extraordinary, because he decided, and now, so have you. The cell is open. The door has been open this entire time. The only thing that was ever keeping you inside it was the belief that you needed someone else to unlock it for you. You had the key. You always had the key. Go build something they cannot ignore, in silence, with patience, with the kind of commitment that does not need a crowd to keep it alive. And when they finally see what you have built, when they finally cannot look away, you will not need to say a single word. The work will say everything. Iron Mind Forge. This is where the decided ones come. Now go decide.